Have you ever seen a weapon whose only purpose is to be destroyed? No, we're not talking about Russian frontal meat grinder assaults. There's an entire underground industry dedicated to creating modern, high-cost weapons just to get blown up. The only catch? They're not real. Decoys are an age-old and highly effective tactical trick that bleeds the enemy dry. And in the Russia-Ukraine war, this tactic has found new life. So how are Ukrainians fooling the Russians with fake weapons? And how does the enemy respond? Right now, there's a boom in these decoys. Until recently, only a small circle of people knew we existed and what we were making. The need for decoys became critical after drones like Russia's Orlan 10 or Ukraine's Leleka started flying deep behind enemy lines, identifying high-value targets. These drones guide expensive munitions, and to confuse the enemy and make them waste those costly rockets, Ukraine started building decoys. Ukrainians clearly took inspiration from the US Ghost Army in World War II, which expertly fooled the Germans with thousands of fake vehicles and planes. But Ukraine went even further. At the start of 2022, real but outdated aircraft were used as bait to preserve newer combat-ready units. MiG-29s, Su-27s, Su-24s, and Su-25s, all decommissioned long before the full-scale invasion, started showing up in Russian stats as destroyed Ukrainian air assets, boosting Russian morale. Meanwhile, Ukraine's real air force kept striking. What's more, some of the first F-16s Ukraine received were likely decoys. Out of the first 4 jets delivered, 2 looked highly suspicious. No technical markings. Outdated friend or foe systems from the original F-16A. No 20mm cannons. That led to the conclusion that at least 2 of those jets were handed over by the US as bait. Think about it, even those are extremely expensive for dummy targets. That's why a Ukrainian volunteer group named Apide introduced a mock F-16 that the Ukrainian Air Force plans to deploy at military airfields. The model is 90 to 100% to scale, made from wood, metal, and plastic. Unlike inflatable versions, these structures hold their shape in all weather. They don't disclose the price, but it's clearly much cheaper than a real US jet, and that makes it worth every penny. Apatey's team will definitely stay busy for years, and it's not just big, costly machines being turned into props. Let's take Starlink, for example. We'll bend this part nicely, then shave the angle here for the right fit. Then we screw this on top. Into this slot goes another piece of plywood, and then we paint it. You might ask, why make decoys of something relatively cheap? It's not about cost, it's about communication. Starlink has become the main link for headquarters, drones, artillery, and other units far from the front. The longer the Starlink survives, the longer the connection holds. One such mock-up costs less to make than the drone used to destroy it. Now let's talk about something heavier, like your like on this video. And decoy armored vehicles. This BMP-2 at first glance is indistinguishable from the real thing. These mock-ups are usually built by volunteers in hidden workshops, and the volume is impressive. This is our 100th model. We've seen tons of footage of how the enemy sees our vehicles. The level of detail here is more than enough. In just 20 to 30 minutes, the guys at the front, in any terrain, without extra tools, using only wing nuts in their hands, can assemble it, even without prior experience. There are also simpler mock-ups that still drive Russians mad. F***ing Ukrainian tanks again, just sitting there, abandoned. Where's the crew? The crew, of course, is currently aiming their cannon at that very annoyed occupier. Despite the volunteers' best efforts and the presence of decoys in Ukraine's arsenal, it's not always possible to get them delivered in time. So soldiers improvise, building dummy gear from whatever they can find. And it works. Dear commanders, a Lancet just hit my wooden tank. We make them from whatever's around, ammo crates, steel, or plastic pipes. Your subscription tells YouTube our channel is worth watching. Tap subscribe to support us. But the junk and scrap method doesn't always work. It's hard to fool an enemy with proper sensors, so more effort is often needed. It's not just about inflating some rubber. The thing has to be painted with reflective coating to bounce electromagnetic waves like real metal. You can even put something inside. A small heater, for example, anything that emits heat. In one already familiar decoy model, they solved the heat signature problem like this. We place regular trench candles inside. They heat up metal plates. That way, we simulate the warmth of an engine that just arrived. Even at night, the enemy's thermal cameras pick it up beautifully, and they totally fall for it. This kind of fake armor, if placed safely within the enemy's field of view, quickly pays for itself. The trick is to place it where any weapon used against it costs more than an FPV drone. drone. Besides ordinary mock armor, decoys are also made to replicate the systems Russians are hunting most aggressively. Take HIMARS, for example. As soon as they appeared, Ukrainians started building HIMARS fakes out of pallets, and the results were great. According to the Washington Post, at least 10 Kaliber missiles were wasted on these wooden HIMARS decoys. Eventually, the HIMARS fakes were upgraded into compact, inflatable versions. While real systems have been hit, these decoys continue to prevent even more losses. Another prized target for the enemy is the M777 howitzer. We've made over 100 decoys. A real howitzer costs at least $3 million. We've saved roughly $300 million for our army. The savings are obvious. One decoy, nicknamed Tolya by the volunteers, cost the Russians $45,000 in their first attack. The mock-up was patched up with duct tape and wire, making it extremely cost-effective. In total, this one decoy has been hit by 15 plus Lancets. The cost difference between what Ukraine spends and what Russia wastes is outrageous. Our channel and Reactive Post are uniting to create a division of models of the most effective howitzer. They're planning to raise funds for 7 M777 models. That's around $4,300 total. If you care, here's the QR code for donations. Air defense system decoys also deserve special attention. These are harder to build, but they can absolutely pay off. A high-quality decoy placed safely in the rear can cost the enemy tens of millions of dollars. That's why the Ukrainian Air Force ordered a Patriot SAM decoy for $10,000. The Russian officer reaction was swift. They're showing pictures saying Ukraine ordered a Patriot system fake for 10 grand. Like idiots think they can fight us with decoys, treating people like morons. Obviously it's to stretch out our strike force, but they act like they don't get it. Hooray, Ukraine's switching to fake weapons instead of real ones. And that officer was absolutely right. In 2024, Russia used expensive missiles to destroy a decoy aircraft and a fake Patriot battery. On their channels, they reported it as a major victory. But what they actually destroyed were volunteer-built mock-ups. Some volunteers dream of drawing even bigger firepower. Only something like an Iskander or another high-value missile would be used against a Patriot. That's our dream. And it's not just Patriots. Even Soviet-era air defense systems like the S-300 have their doppelgangers. Even the old Soviet S-300 SAM systems came with decoys included in the standard kit, inflatable ones. At a distance of 20 to 30 meters or even 100, you couldn't tell them apart. So Ukraine has plenty of smart ideas, skilled hands, and resources to keep tricking the enemy. And what about Russian decoys? Everyone remembers those famous inflatable troops from 2015 that became an online joke. But the reality is different. Such mock-ups have become an important part of combat. Although, in one video something clearly went wrong. A Russian tank slowly deflated mid-deployment. Another element in Russia's deception game, drones. One model called Herbera used to fly over Ukraine to confuse air defense systems during mass attacks. Made of foam and plastic, it originally had no warhead, but today, Gerbera carries an explosive payload. From decoy to strike drone in no time. Another example, fake Lancet launch sites. Russia uses even regular cars to improve realism and divert attention from real launchers. How effective this is? Still unclear. As we can see, both sides use quality decoys. In this real war of fake weapons, the most attentive side wins. And to wrap things up, let's talk about one of the oldest and simplest types of decoys, the classic dummy. They've been used since ancient times for training and to deceive the enemy. And they still work. Who in the 21st century would fall for a scarecrow, you might ask? But the Russians actively use them too. In this video, you can see an entire formation of mannequins. The reason is simple. FPV drone cameras are far from perfect, and in daylight, these figures can still fool the enemy. Dummies were especially effective in the early stages of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Remember how Russian troops panicked and opened fire on a monument in Bucha? Now imagine how a mannequin with a gun behind a tree could have confused them even more. Here, for example, a Ukrainian soldier rushes to place a dummy to visually increase the number of defenders at a position. Would anyone do that if the tactic didn't work? I think the answer is obvious. And overall, decoys still work just as well as they did 100 years ago. They've just become more expensive and a bit smarter, refined for the tech-heavy battlefield of today. Decoys save your own forces and drain the enemies. The key is not to overdo it and not to spend too much. Decoys work, but they don't offer 100% protection against enemy attacks. If they confuse the enemy even once, that's already good. If a single missile worth hundreds of thousands or even millions hits a decoy, that's a success. So what does this all tell us? In a war where every missile counts and every loss hurts, Decoys flip the equation. For a fraction of the cost, they protect real assets, force the enemy to second guess, and buy precious time. It's a strange kind of arms race where victory isn't about firepower but about tricking your opponent into wasting theirs. And big thanks to our new sponsors, Albert Grimes and Dry Frog. We're happy to have you with us. Want to see your name here too? Join our sponsorship program and get some cool perks. Get more details in the description. What topic should we cover next? Drop your ideas in the comments. We'll choose from the most liked ones.